Hi everybody, welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host Bill Whittle, and it is the 4th of June 2020. Let me just adjust this a little bit. There we go. Hope everybody's doing well. That's not the way I wanted to go, but at that point, I guess I don't really care too much. How's everybody doing? I've had an interesting day, and I think we'll talk about that after we roll the premiere. I have to tell you, one of the reasons we started late today was because this new firewall was cooking while the walk-in music was rolling. So anyway, and I want to say first of all, on a day like today, how much I appreciate all of these enthusiastic welcomes. It's been a very, very interesting day, and we'll talk about that later. Anyway. The firewall that I did, it's got a new look. I just got a little tired of the burning well of fire and all of that stuff. It just, I don't know, maybe just time for change. Maybe I feel better about America's chances. Most of that stuff happened during the Obama administration. So anyway, I gave it a new look. And I should just say also two things. I haven't had a chance to check this. I'm sure it's going to be pretty close. There might be little rendering glitches and so on. And then the other thing is I have not had time yet to do somebody asked me to blink twice if I was real. I haven't had a chance to do any of the opening graphics, so I want to redo the opening and the closing graphics. So this is just the content, but nevertheless, you get the idea. So I guess I might as well just tee it up. It's a longer one, but again, having done a year without a firewall, but having done all of those long format Cold War and Apollo 11 things, I thought that's basically where things kind of need to be going. So anyway, here you go. And give me a second just to mute the sound on my mic, and if you can't hear it, it'll just take a second for me to get it teed up. But like I said, we were cooking this one as the show opens, so I hope you like it. It's called Two Americas. On May 29, 2020, Dr. Cornel West, a leading voice of modern progressivism, was interviewed on CNN regarding the rampant violence in the streets of American cities following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis 4 days earlier. "I think we're witnessing America as a failed social experiment," said West. Speaking about what the future holds, he added, "When you talk about the masses of black people, the precious poor, and working class black people, brown, red, yellow, whatever color, they're the ones left out and they feel so thoroughly powerless, helpless, hopeless. Then you get rebellion. White supremacy is going to be around for a long, long time, so don't be surprised when this happens again. But the question is, we must fight. Even in the moment when we have a failed social experiment, we must fight." Never thought I'd say this, but Cornel West is 100% right. America is a failed social experiment. His America is, anyway. Meanwhile, as American cities burned in Cornel West's rage-driven America, the United States began a new era in space exploration when, for the first time, two Americans named Bob and Doug flew to the International Space Station in a revolutionary vehicle that was not the product of a government program. The Dragon capsule that they had named Endeavour was, for the first time in human history, private property. "The United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration," said Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur behind SpaceX, the company that built the revolutionary Falcon rocket and the Dragon capsule. Speaking about what the future holds, he added, "Of course, we need to bring them back safely, and we need to repeat these missions and have this be a regular occurrence. There's a lot of work to do. I mean, this is a craft made by humans, for humans. This is something I think humanity should be excited about and proud of occurring on this day." Well, Elon Musk is 100% right, too. America is a uniquely creative, optimistic, and above all, successful social experiment. His America is, anyway. So, let's compare and contrast these two Americas, shall we? Okay, now just to avoid any political labels that just muddy the waters with emotional baggage, we'll refer to Elon Musk's America as Team Red and Cornel West's America as Team Blue. And let's also pick a, 6-letter word that really encapsulates the essence of each side. How about Antifa for Blue America, and SpaceX for Red America. So, what's the difference? Well, first and most importantly, Team Red are individualists. They see America as a collection of unique people. Team Blue are collectivists. They see America as a collection of unique communities. Now, as a result of this, Team Red strives for individual justice, that is, punishing the individual that committed the harm. Team Blue aims for social justice, the descendants of former victims punishing the descendants of former oppressors. Now, this also points out one of the fundamental differences between these two Americas. Team Red is fascinated by the future, and Team Blue is obsessed with the past. Because they look forward, Team Red feels that they're masters of their own fate. Because they look back, Team Blue feels that they are victims of fate. Team Red therefore feels that society is essentially fluid and that it's possible to improve their lives. But Team Blue feels that society is utterly rigid and your position in life is fixed and inalterable, meaning the only way to improve your life is to smash society. Now, of course, every person grows up with their own worldview and their own motivation, and those psychological attractors tend to pull people towards one side or the other. Team Red has confidence in their own abilities, therefore competition doesn't frighten them. On the contrary, they view the inevitable failure that comes with competition as a learning opportunity and a way to improve themselves for the flexible future. Team Red feels no shame in losing, but they do feel great shame in cheating. Team Blue is comprised of players who feel, for whatever reason, inferior to others. Competition scares them because they expect to fail due to built-in social structures, and therefore competition is fundamentally unfair. Since they feel that competition is unfair, Team Blue feels no shame in cheating, but they feel great shame in losing. Now, this belief in their own capabilities and their belief in a fluid society makes Team Red lean towards free markets. They want limited government, which means as few rules as possible so as not to restrict their own options. But they despise cheaters to their core, and so demand that those few rules be rigidly enforced. Convinced that a class or race-based society would prevent them from succeeding even if they tried, Team Blue tends to favor a powerful state that, through taxation and regulation, restrains the initiative and redistributes the gains made by Team Red, whose success is attributable only to their privileged position in a rigidly class-based society. These restrictions do not apply to themselves, however, due to their perceived victim status. The ability to ignore the rules when it suits them is perceived by Team Blue to be a form of justice. Now, due to these psychological differences, Team Red believes in rigid standards and believes that testing measures success. Team Blue believes in lessening or abolishing all standards because they believe that testing measures failure. Team Red tends to be more confident, and that makes them optimistic. They see their America as filled with people who want to help them up. Team Blue tends to be suspicious, which makes them pessimistic. Their America is filled with people who want to keep them down. That self-confidence predisposes Team Red to expect to be able to defend themselves as well, with firearms to protect them from predators and immune systems to protect them from pandemics. Team Blue is utterly dependent on politicians or experts to keep them safe and tell them when they can leave the house. The end result is that Team Blue is fearful while Team Red is careful. New ideas stimulate Team Red, and they actively look for places to encounter them, like colleges and universities. New ideas frighten Team Blue, and they look for places where they can be protected from them, like colleges and universities. Because new experiences can reveal some of their pre-existing beliefs may be an error, Red players view changing their mind on an issue as a strength. Team Blue also understands that new experiences can change their perspective, but because of their lack of self-confidence, they view the idea of admitting they had been wrong as a sign of failure and therefore a sign of weakness to be avoided at all costs. So, how does all of this translate into the daily lives of the residents of these two Americas? Well, Team Red gets up early, Team Blue stays up late. In a world of perceived opportunities, time is precious to Team Red. In the inalterable, predetermined future of Team Blue, time is something to be killed. That's why Team Red prefers activities that sharpen the mind, while Team Blue endlessly searches for new ways to dull the senses. Team Red studies things like engineering, which requires a huge commitment of time and effort. Team Blue studies things like STEM's intersectionality with power and patriarchy, which doesn't. Talking about your feelings is easy. Proficiency with calculus, That's hard. Team Red likes doing things that are hard. Team Blue likes doing things that are easy. Since Team Red thinks that the future is what we make it, they study history to learn from the mistakes and the successes of those who came before them. Since Team Blue sees the future as an endless continuation of power structures that they blame for their lack of success and happiness, their only interest in history is that it be destroyed. Team Red lives in the physical world, the external world of gravity, velocity, and aerodynamic pressure. Team Blue lives in the internal world of grievance, victimhood, and academic preconceptions. Red, therefore, sees truth as something external and objective, while Blue sees truth as something as internal and subjective. The further a Blue player departs from external reality, the greater he or she is rewarded. The greater a Red player diverges from external truth, the more of their friends die in fiery wreckage. Now, as a result, Team Red holds the idea of truth in high regard as something permanent and external that anyone can find if they look hard enough and long enough and honestly enough. Blue Team has such contempt for the entire idea of truth that most of them are proud of the several individual truths that they alone own. Now, obviously, we can do this all day, so let's just wrap it up back where we began. Cornel West talks of red, brown, yellow, and white people perpetually at war with one another and tells his followers they have to fight. Elon Musk talks about space exploration as something all of humanity should be proud of. Elon Musk has to unite people and have them trust each other in order to achieve his goals, and Cornel West has to divide people and get them to hate each other in order to achieve his. Now, if you're old enough so that all of this sounds familiar to you, then by now you probably already know which team you're on. But if you're still young, however, mentally at least, you may still be trying to figure out which team you want to be on. And here is where I have some good news and some bad news. So, which do you want first? Okay, the bad news is that most of the time, the team you end up on is a result of simple, dumb luck of being born into a family that tells you you can do anything if you work hard enough versus one that tells you you ain't shit and you never will be. If you're born lucky, your parents will give you a toy as a reward for good behavior. If you're not, then your parents give you a toy to stop the temper tantrum. Going from blue to red is difficult, but it's possible. Going from red to blue is a whole lot easier. Now, Cornel West and others will tell you that making it to Team Red is based exclusively on your gender, but especially your skin color. That's not true. Cornel West is lying to you because it's Cornel West's America that's obsessed with skin color. Elon Musk recruits from a pool he calls humanity. And as a matter of fact, if you really think about it, it's the upper echelons of Team Blue that are rigidly restricted according to skin color. Now, for the good news, anybody can be on Team Red. Anybody. All you have to do are 3 simple things. I didn't say they were easy things. I said simple things. First, you have to be willing to work hard. The Blue Team playbook reads like this. Look at all of that wealth other people have. Go out there and burn it. Team Red's credo is much more difficult. Look at all that wealth other people have. Go out there and earn it. It takes decades of endless work and stress to build a business. It only takes a few minutes to burn one to the ground. Second rule for Team Red. The price you pay for controlling your own destiny is that you're responsible for it. You bought it, so you own it. Live up to your responsibilities. Man up, whatever your gender happens to be. And every time you're given a choice between doing the smart thing or doing the right thing, you take the second one every time, or else you get cut from the team. And the third and final thing you have to do to get on Team Red is to lighten the up a little. My God. With cell phones, antibiotics, anesthetics, air conditioning, internet access, $200 sneakers, and enough cheap food to produce an obesity epidemic, even the poorest Americans today live a life that emperors could have never dreamed of. Yes, life is unfair. Some people are born with 4 aces and a king, and others don't have a pair of deuces. With his bachelor's degree in physics and economics, Elon Musk understands the one great secret to life that magna cum laude graduate of Harvard and Princeton doctor of philosophy Cornel West either cannot or will not see. And that truth is this: you don't have to end up where you started from. You get to play the hand. Cornel West's Blue America is, in fact, a failed social experiment. His socialist, progressive, grievance, and entitlement-based social model has resulted in murder and misery, and all he offers for the future is endless race war. Elon Musk's red team is up in orbit, looking down not just at America, but at every single individual human on planet Earth every 90 minutes. Skin color is not visible from low Earth orbit. Blue team is going to Starbucks, red team is going to the stars. So, which one do you want to be? A blue-blooded American who's perpetually red in the face with hate and outrage, or a red-blooded American who doesn't have the time nor the inclination to sing the blues? Let's try that. Well, I can tell you one thing. That's the first time I watched it, and the first thing I can say with confidence is that I'm shooting that thing again tomorrow morning. Now, this may come as a shock to people, but the actual shooting of the thing is probably the least time-consuming aspect of the entire process. It actually is only half an hour. The makeup was terrible. The lighting's about the same. The makeup was terrible, and furthermore, it was badly exacerbated. It didn't look that bad on the original footage, but I had a kind of a strange key, chroma key, so I had to do a lot to get the key in there. And anyway, that's that. So yeah, and we recorded it yesterday, and it was hot in here. But in any event, I'm quite sure I'm going to reshoot that thing tomorrow morning. But it is essentially going to look the same. All the post-production work was tough, and that's the stuff that we care about. Anyway, yeah, that thought occurred to me. I think I probably wrote this about a week ago, a little bit later after. I mean, I remember coming home and we did the SpaceX launch, and I don't know if that was the date that the rioting started or whether it was shortly thereafter, but I remember thinking, well, here we got two Americas. Which one are we going to pick? Now, long-term fans will recognize this. I didn't realize it until I'd finished writing it, but it's a rewrite, and it's a rewrite of something that I wrote in 2005. Back when I was doing Eject, 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 and which shows up in Silent America. And essentially what it is it's a rewrite of an essay I wrote called Tribes. Like I said, it's not like I sat down and rewrote Tribes. But the fact of it is it's the same essay. So having looked at it and watching the comment stream, just real quick, I can't lose a lot of people saying language, so I think I'll probably beep the "you ain't blank" and never will be, but you got to have that statement. You got to have that. You can't say "you'll never amount to anything, darling," and make the thing make sense. So I'll probably do that and bleep the S word, and I probably drop, I think, the F word on the lighten. It just felt like it needed it. It was like lighten up, please. That's ultimately what it is. It's like you got to just kind of. I think I don't put anything in there, especially things like that, without enormous consideration. And I don't mean like, man, I mean enormous consideration. This particular video is a recruiting. It's a recruiting video, and there's a certain amount of I don't know. It's not like I'm swearing for credibility so much as that I think you kind of lose it a little bit. It's like George Carlin talking about the 7 words you couldn't say on TV, and a scene of like motorcycle gangs, and the guys turn to each other and says, "I'll be right back, Snake. I've got to go tinkle now." But in any event, yeah, having to share it with students and stuff, I'll probably bleep it for that reason. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's kind of a one-way valve. You can, I don't know. I'm going to think it over. But that's really it. And I just You know, on second thought, I think I'm going to keep it, and I'll tell you why. It should punch you in the face. Because that's how people are raised. That's what they hear every day. Many people hear that every day, and they don't need people who don't hear it every day need to hear it and need to hear what it sounds like. So I will consult the the chicken innards and the coffee grounds and see what I should do about that. But in any event, it's it's the essence of the truth. I mean, it's really it. And I think I don't know. It's like it's kind of like I said. Now I wrote Tribes in 2005, right after Kanye West said that George Bush hates black people and that the Superdome was something about the wishing conservatives would get locked in the Superdome so that they could, because there was all kinds of tales of horror and rape and all this other stuff going on. And I just got so angry at that I just wrote, basically said, look, you put my people in the Superdome and you're not going to get rapes and you're not going to get murders or deaths. You're going to get people rationing food and you're going to get people protecting people on the way to the bathroom. You're going to get all that stuff. That's basically it. But I think it was time for that message to come back again, because you look at all of this stuff, and the tragedy about it is that it's that they're both true. They're both real, and I had repeatedly resisted the almost overpowering sensation to snark up Blue Team a little more than I did. It was almost overwhelming. But what I really wanted was I wanted a video so that if somebody from the other team looked at it, they could say, well, that reasonably describes, where we are. I don't think there's any question about which side comes off cooler. There is one thing that I didn't get to yet, and I was gonna end the video with this as a post-production issue. I was gonna fade to white and then just have a picture of the red pill and in big letters in Helvetica says take the red pill, and then there's a pause, and then after that below it fades in. It says it's way cooler and it's a lot more fun, and I think I'll probably put that in. Because it is, and that's that's it. You got, I mean, really, you almost. I don't want to lose the. I don't want to lose the ability to monetize this to whatever degree. If I use the actual interviews of Cornel West and Elon Musk, it'll get flagged. I'd win the fight because it's fair use. It's definition of fair use. But I wanted to. I just wanted to show that difference in attitude. If you listen to them talking, I mean, it's just like, Cornel West is just filled with rage and we got nothing but fighting and war and race war and white supremacy is going to be around for a long time, and Elon Musk is saying, I think this is something that all humanity should be proud of. America's uniquely inclined towards exploration and stuff. He said it better than I did, but it was a pretty big contrast. So fortunately, anyway, I'm just kind of reading some comments as they come along here. But yeah, anyway, that's that. So I'm gonna go now to the topic of the reflections video that I put out today. I'm getting a better reaction from my friends in the Stratosphere Lounge, but the YouTube comments were brutal. brutal. Let's see, I'm just trying to think of some of them. Coward, traitor, beta male, all of these things. You're given the left ammunition, you're, I always knew you were a closet liberal, all of that stuff. And a lot of it, an awful lot of it. So this is not for our friends in the Stratosphere Lounge, and it's not for members or anything. This is for the people on YouTube. This is just for the people on YouTube. So I just got to get it out of my system, if you don't mind. First things first. If the country has become so polarized that the left says that murder is a terrible thing, and that means that instantly we have to start saying, no, it's not, then we've lost our way. And I'm not going there, and I'm not taking anybody with me there. Just because people with a different political system say something doesn't mean that you have to automatically disagree with it. As I said, if they said that murdering is bad, there are people out there on the conservative side who would say, well, it's not all that bad. Liberals, soft. Look, everybody's on the same page more or less on this one in terms of the cause. So let me show you what got me to do that episode. Here it comes. Now, you may notice this is the photograph that I referred to in the video. Now, you may notice a couple things about this picture. I think maybe the first thing you might notice is that I'm not in the photograph. You may notice I'm not in there at all. And you may also notice that these policemen are taking a knee. They're not kneeling. I got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of comments saying, I only kneel to God. Okay, well, that's fine. But presumably the God you're talking about is the God for a Christian God, the God of turn the other cheek and extension of mercy and grace, beta Jesus, coward Jesus, traitor Jesus, that Jesus. But I didn't push these guys to the ground, and I didn't make them do this. Now, for those people who say that this is shameful, I would tell you, as I said on the episode, that was certainly my first reaction was that this is bad. I don't like seeing this. And then I got over some of my pride, and I took a look at this picture a little more carefully. And the first thing I see is that the guy in the foreground is got 4 stars on his collar. So I'm going to assume that this guy has had more experience police on the streets than I do, and I'm going to assume that all the rest of the guys back there, the guy on the left has 4 stars too. So I'm going to assume these guys know more about police work than I do. This is just my starting assumption. If these guys felt the cause to do this, then that got me to thinking about things. Now, what did it get me thinking about? Well, I will tell you. It's not the picture of the police taking a knee that got me to understand what it is that Black Lives Matter is talking about. And can I just say seems like this should be so unbelievably obvious. But seriously, is it gotten to the point now where if you say I understand something, people hear I agree with this? I never said that I agree with Black Lives Matter. I did a video called Black Lives Matter Kills People. I would run that tomorrow. I completely agree with it. I've said it throughout the entire length of that episode. The entire thing is irrational. It's completely irrational. And the whole narrative about policemen going down the streets and just murdering black people is just plain flat out lie. It's just not true. So what got me to understand their position was not the policeman taking a knee. What got me to understand their position was the reaction of the protesters when the police had the moral courage to take a knee. And I think those cops had moral courage, even though when I first saw it, it just made me almost sick. And I'll tell you why I think they had moral courage. What they're doing in that picture is they're saying, basically, they're not saying that they're not saying anything other than the fact that these individual cops agree that what happened to George Floyd was not what they do. And put that aside, I don't know why the police took a knee. But I do know this. I know that when they were confronted with people who were filled with rage, and if I've seen anything these last several days, these last 8-10 days, of all the things that makes my blood boil, it's the sight of some social justice warrior screaming, the picture, their mouth open, screaming right in the face of a police officer who's just standing there and taking it. It makes me nuts. And so that also had an effect on me. Because if watching police officers getting yelled at by people for things that they didn't do, they had nothing to do with this. And the total number of blacks killed by police in 2017 was 4%. And that's all of them. That's not just unjust killings. That's you walk up and shoot a cop and he shoots you back and kills you, 4% total. So all of this is in there. And the cops know this too. So what is it that made those police chiefs take a knee? And I think what they did was they had the moral courage to say, yes, what happened to George Floyd was really abominable. That's not to say they agree with everything else, but again, it's not me, it's police chiefs, and it's not the only ones. It's all around the country I've seen this happen. So now let's get to the brass tacks of all of this stuff. Where do I want to go with this? Oh, I remember. What got me to understand the Black Lives Matter position? You may notice, by the way, that I didn't say what got me to agree with the Black Lives Matter position, but what allowed me to understand it was that it wasn't the police taking a knee that changed my opinion of people's reasoning, because they're not reasoning, and I'll get to that in a second. It's the reaction of the protesters. It's the rage is not lowered, it's not turned down, it's not walked back. It's gone. And so if you've got people in the streets who've been protesting this stuff, and it doesn't take 2 hours of argumentation to walk them down. If there's one single signal that just turns it off, then you are dealing with something that's not rational. And I've known this from the beginning. I've said from the beginning, the Black Lives Matter movement is not rational. Now, here's the point, folks. The work I try to do, I try to defend reason and decency. And when people say, as I've said many times, that this is an irrational thing to be doing, I realized that it is an irrational belief to think that everybody in the world will behave rationally. If you think that rational argument will affect and change the minds of everybody in the world, that is an irrational belief to have. If you're going to be reasonable, if you personally are going to be reasonable, then you have to understand that there are many, if not most, people and causes motivated by emotion, and that reason bounces off of it. And this is perhaps the gold prize winner of this particular thing. So now to the whole thing about this idea about surrendering, which I saw hundreds, well, I don't know, hundreds, but scores of comments about. I've gone to the other side and I'm soft on this and soft on that and all the rest of this stuff. To those people on YouTube, by the way, because a lot of people just wrote some really nasty stuff. Let me just say this. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've had 150 million people watch these videos. And the number of people who've come up to me and said, you turned me from being a liberal into conservative is beyond my counting. I've done more for this cause than you have done with your anonymous comments on YouTube and will ever do for the entire part of your life. You sit there in perfect anonymity and you throw these thunderbolts and no one's as conservative as you are. That's fine. But I'm out there with my name on it, and I am out there doing this. So you can take that and just stuff it, because it's just plain bullshit, period. End of sentence. I have had enough of that. Now, back to the issue, the question, all of it. Is this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing right here. What is this? What is it? Is it surrender? Is this surrender? A lot of people say it is, and a lot of people say that that I'm surrendering by acknowledging the effect that these lifelong police officers had and why they did it. Now, if you're saying that that's surrender, then what you're basically saying is that these police officers are negating their entire life's work. This is not surrendering. This isn't. What this is saying, in my opinion, what this is saying is, it is saying that we understand in this case that this was an injustice and we regret it and we understand it. I didn't get these guys to kneel. All I did was react to that picture. And I think, and not only that picture, the picture of the protesters who wanted to kill him suddenly hugging them and crying. Okay, so something's going on here. Something important is going on here. And I'm not going to be, I will continue. Look, I knew there was going to be some blowback to this. I didn't quite think it would be this big, but that's okay. I understood that a lot of this was coming. But honestly, folks, this is the takeaway for it. Then I'll go to questions. This is the takeaway for it. If 15, 20 years of fighting against progressivism, or 40 years, or 50 years, if fighting against progressivism for that long has gotten you to the point where you are ready to take any position opposite whatever a liberal takes, then that's progressivism. That's just plain groupthink. That's just the inability to deal with a situation that is fundamentally emotional in a rational way. And I've seen a number of people send out videos about what a rotten guy George Floyd was. I have no doubt about that at all. None. In fact, that's the first thing I heard about him, and that's why the first take of that show was me throwing thunderbolts and lightning. And then I saw the video, and then I realized, okay, if you look at that and say, if you look at that guy sitting on his neck for 10 minutes and the guy's on the ground and his hands are tied behind him, and you think that's okay, then there's nothing, it has nothing to do with George Floyd or what George Floyd may have done 30 seconds earlier, 30 years earlier, 30 minutes earlier. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is that this guy was on the ground with his hands handcuffed behind him, and for a man to basically for 7 or 8 minutes say, I can't breathe, and then call out for his dead mother because he's in such distress, then that's not, it's not a defensible position. It's got nothing to do with him. It's got everything to do with the indifference of that police officer and the police officer standing behind them. So I'm not going to go to a place where people say, I'm not going to go to a place where I'm defending that police officer. I'm just not going to do it. I defended, and I would point out, by the way, that of the videos I've done, the one that got the most traction ever was the one where I pointed out that Trayvon Martin was not innocent of what happened when he got into that altercation, and also during the entire situation with what's his name in Ferguson, Michael Brown. Was it Michael Brown? In the case, let's take Michael Brown for example. Brown was in the process of fighting a police officer and trying to yank him out of the car. That was, I thought the Michael Brown thing was completely justified on the part of the police, absolutely justified on the part of the police, and that's where they burn cities forever. But this one, I'm sorry. Look, as I mentioned in the episode, I watched the Rodney King riots here, and I watched them as a person who's always been a fan of the police and have done everything I can for the police and will continue to do for law enforcement. And I watched that video and the Rodney King video, and I watched them go through it frame by frame and say how he's doing this. But when you watch the video, what you got is you got a guy on the ground having 4 policemen wailing on him with sticks. I'm not saying the police shouldn't have wailed on him with a stick. I'm not saying that at all. I know that he was in a high-speed chase. I know that he was fighting. He was probably drugged up. I get all of that. But once the man's down, you put handcuffs on him, and that's it. And if you can't stop there, then you're in the wrong line of work. And now we get to, in my opinion, what this picture means. What this picture means to me is not that I agree with, or it's not, this picture's not saying, no, Black Lives Matter is 100% legitimate all the time. Of course not. These people know how many people are killed by cops. They know better than anybody. What the people are doing here is they're saying, in this case, it was wrong and we don't agree with it. This is not who we are. That sentence has been overused so many times. That's what I think I'm seeing here. Anyway, I'll go to questions on this for a while, but that's it. And I'm taking my cue for this off of what police chiefs are doing. And if a police chief with 4 stars on his collar is willing to get down and take a knee on this because they feel that it was wrong, then that gets my attention. If it was the fact that it was a number of police chiefs and not just here, all around the country, it's been deactivated. And you see these policemen being hugged by these protesters that wanted to kill them just a few minutes ago. And I'd prefer, frankly, for the American populace of inner cities not to want to kill policemen. That would be my choice. My choice would be that people are not enraged and throwing things at cops and spitting in their faces and so on. My preference would be that the communities that the police have to go into would be the kind of communities where people would want to hug the police. And that's what happened. That's what factually happened. I didn't make it up. I didn't speculate. That's what's going on, and that's what happened. Okay? So that's why I see what they're getting at. And what they're getting at is they want an acknowledgement that this is wrong. And I don't think and they wanted that with Brown, and they wanted that with Trayvon Martin, and they wanted that with Rodney King. And just as a human being, I can look at these 4 cases. I can look at the Rodney King thing and say, Rodney King's a big guy, and I'm sure he's a bad guy, and I'm sure they had a hard time getting him down. But when you've got 4 policemen there, the guy should be handcuffed, and that's the end of it. That's what the police do. The police are not the jury, they're not the judge, and they're not the executioners. That's not their job. And I don't want to live in a society where they are. And it's not disrespecting police, and it's not spitting on police, and it's not taking the side against the police for me to say this. It is taking the police's side for me to say that I don't want to see that. That's why those police lieutenants took a knee, because they understood that this is not what policemen do. This is not professional, for any other word. So, Trayvon Martin was made into this, I'm just walking down the street and some guy just walks up and shoot him. No, absolutely not. He was strung out on all this other stuff, got into an altercation with whatever his name is. It'll come back to me when I don't need it anymore. There was a fight. He's got these bangs on the back of his head. He was fighting for his life. Zimmerman. Zimmerman was fighting for his life. Now you could say, well, how did the fight start or not? Doesn't matter. He was fighting for his life. So they were right about King. They were wrong about Zimmerman. They were wrong about Michael Brown, because Michael Brown was in the process of fighting with a police officer when the police officer was fired the shots. But here again is a case of there is just simply here's what I can't, here's me, okay? This is what I can't understand about this. If I'm a police officer, I understand, I think Bill understands well enough at this point, understands the psychology of police officers. I'm not saying I know what their life is like. I'm saying I understand enough about people to understand that projection of authority has to be there, that absolute confidence, that police voice, that expectation of being obeyed. I get all of that. And all of that is at stake until somebody gets this guy on the ground. And when he's on the ground and disarmed, then that's it. And for that police officer, here's what I'm saying, folks, it's just this simple. There was no reason for him to be on that guy's neck for 10 minutes. There was no reason for it, none. And that's the thing that I think caused those police professionals to take a knee. And if you think my pride was something I had to overcome to say I understand what they're saying now, you can imagine what these guys felt. How do you think, I'll come back to it one more time because picture's worth 1,000 words. How do you think it feels for these men? Whoops. I'm serious now. This is we're really at the heart of it now. How do you think it feels for these men? I want you to look at these men carefully, and I want you to look at what you can see of their expressions, and I want you to tell me how you think that feels to them. Somebody said emasculating. I don't see that. I see regret, and I see shame. And I see them not ashamed of themselves and not ashamed of the police force. I see them ashamed of somebody who made them look bad and who played into all of these preconceptions in this narrative that's trying to be sold. So in any event, that's it. Somebody wrote, Zagre Fang wrote penance. That's an interesting thought. They don't have anything. They don't have anything to be repentant of. They didn't do anything. What I think they're doing is that they are showing that this is not. What they're showing is that what happened to George Floyd is not what they consider to be police work, and the guy who did it, they don't consider to be a policeman. That's what I think. That's what I think. And since that's what I think and that's what I believe, that's what I'm going to say. And so there you go. These don't look like liberals to me. These don't look like the kind of affirmative action appointment cops that you might get from Barack Obama or from the mayor of San Francisco. As a matter of fact, by strange coincidence, these guys are the police officers in Coral Gables, Florida, and I went to Coral Gables High School. So I can tell you that is a pretty conservative neighborhood. Anyway, the thing I'll close with, and then we'll go to the questions, is this. What I read, what I found out by reading what I read, and then we'll do all the questions that you want to. But reading the comments, I realized that people were reacting to things that I didn't say. and they were just instantly lashing out at things that I never said. And I'm not walking back. I'm not saying I was misunderstood or anything. I'm just saying that I prefaced this thing and ended it by saying I think this whole thing is an irrational lie. But now I understand it. All right, let's have a look. Bill, you have no idea what you're talking about. The guy was 6'6" and 223 pounds and resisting arrest, behaving unpredictably, drugged up to the eyeballs. Cops have to deal with those types every day. It's extremely hard. You can't tell them, sir, accompany me to the precinct. It's not how it works. If you watch police videos, you will see those perps claiming they can't breathe or are dying 1,000 times. It happens over and over and over. Well, would you want somebody doing that to your daughter or your son? You know, were they in danger? Is that what you're saying? I've conceded from the beginning that a great deal of physical force must have been necessary to subdue this guy and get him cuffed. But I don't see how a man lying on his stomach with his hands cuffed behind his back is much of a continuing threat to 4 police officers with guns. So, I don't know how. I'll put it to you this way. I know a few police officers, not as many. You may be a police officer, the guy who just wrote this, so for more, maybe you're a police officer. You may know more about this than I do. But I'll tell you this, I don't know any police officers who would make that argument. And I don't know any people who would make that argument either. It's a straw man argument. If it was Grandma Gertrude, no cop would need to rough them up or need to hold them down. Every cop I've heard from is in lockstep with Bill on this one. Yeah, imagine that. That's a different person, by the way. So, you know, the reason that I have such enormous regard for police is because their job is the hardest job. I've given this some thought since then. Maybe the most difficult job in the world, and I'll tell you why. In a totalitarian society, being a policeman is easy. You just go out and beat up people and do whatever you want to. In a completely liberal society, it's relatively easy because you have no power, and you know that if you're a Dutch policeman or whatever, a British policeman, you can't do anything. The population's not armed. You're just there to, to be mocked at. But in America, you've got a pretty excitable population. All of us are descended from adventurers and bold people. And you've got a lot of guns on the streets, which, how many videos have I done about gun rights? None of which I'm even contemplating changing my opinion on. But in this society, they have to go out there and they have to deal with extremely violent people who are more than likely armed, and then they have to do it in such a way so that they have to deal with all the civil rights thing. I think being a police officer in the United States is the hardest job there is. So I'm with the cops on this one. And this is my entire point. Maybe I should have just said this in one sentence. I am with the police on this one because I'm with the police on virtually all of them. And if you think that being with the police on this one means being on the side of the guy with this knee on his neck, no. As somebody pointed out, virtually every police officer who's spoken publicly or people know personally agree that this was wrong. And so I'm going to stay with the cops on this one. It is not relevant what he did or how big he is. All of that is a factor in getting him subdued. But when the man is handcuffed on the ground, that's it. I'm sorry, that's it. And this officer has made a lot of police officers ashamed to be police, and that's a horrible thing. So anyway, I am going to take a look at the Facebook questions, which should be amusing because God knows the comments about the video were. Let's see what we got here. Did it not? Maybe I just need to refresh the page. Sorry, hang on a second. Okay, here we go. Already looks like we're off to a good start here. Let's see what we have to say. Steve Young. I'm military. The reason for posse comitatus is to prevent me from going all military against U.S. citizens. Visualize helicopter gunships clearing the streets as soon as curfew goes into effect. The military are not peacekeepers. If we deploy the military, I think it should be in the form of forcing the state National Guard units into action regardless of what governors and mayors say. They have a duty to protect their states, not destroy the enemy. I completely agree with that. Of all the things that I've seen during this period of rioting, so I'm not talking about the protesting, but I am talking about the rioting. I see people coming out of stores with armloads of justice, and I just want to kill people. I just want a flamethrower. I just really do. That's the honest truth. But doing something and wanting to do something are two different things. So, Steve, of all the things I've heard and seen during this, the thing that impressed me the most was statements made by Rudy Giuliani. And Rudy Giuliani, like the police officers in Coral Gables, has credibility with me. And the credibility that Rudy Giuliani has with me, personally, I'm speaking for myself as always, but the credibility that Rudy Giuliani has with me is credibility that Rudy Giuliani earned from me, earned it over a long period of time. New York was a sewer. The murder rate was 2 or 3, something like approaching 3,000 people a year in New York alone. And Rudy Giuliani got it down to 300, something like that. And he got it down to 300 by enforcing law. Here's what Rudy Giuliani said about the riots. And this just goes to the idea about needing the military in the first place. Giuliani said that there's been a number of uprisings and riots and civil unrest in New York City when he was the mayor. He was vilified from the moment he got into office. Before he even was sworn in, he was already called a racist and a brute and so on because he'd been a prosecutor, because he had the novel idea in New York of putting bad guys behind bars. Giuliani, speaking just a couple nights ago on Fox, said, looking at the situation in Minneapolis and Los Angeles, said that that the mayors that are doing this are making, not only allowing their city to be destroyed and their people harmed, he said, but they are making an enormous mistake. Enormous. Giuliani said that that this idea that if we're nice to the rioters and we give them a chance to kind of cool off, give them a little air, that things will calm down. He said, no, it's insane. It's nuts. He said, when we had these kind of situations in New York, we would let the protesters protest. And the instant that somebody threw a rock at a police car, we arrested that guy. And then the next guy who threw a rock at a police car, we arrested that guy. And when a third guy did it, we arrested him too, and there was no fourth guy. We went after the people who started the violence, and they got arrested, every single one of them, before the violence had a chance to catch fire. Here, in Los Angeles, having watched it for 4 or 5 nights now and having a 5 o'clock curfew for the last 3 days, here, what I'm watching is, and Giuliani was reacting to a clip that I saw earlier that night. There, in Los Angeles, there were a number of looters inside a building, a significant number of policemen in riot gear, I want to say 15 maybe, 15 police officers surrounding this entrance that they bashed a hole in the side of the store. And when it became clear that the police were outside, the looters started coming running out, just flowing out. And they ran right through the police force. And no one was grabbed and no one was arrested. Nothing. Now, obviously, those officers are under instruction to do that. That's all there is to it. So what does that tell you? What does it tell you? It tells you if you want to go smash some windows, then what's the worst that's going to happen? Used to be the worst that's going to happen is maybe there's a thin chance you'll get caught by the police, but now they know it doesn't even matter if you get caught by the police, because if you get caught by the police, you just run right past them because they're not going to do anything. That is just plain insane. I saw something earlier today that made my wife angrier than I've ever seen her, and God knows I do a lot to provoke people into being angry. But just a few hours ago, she showed me an article that says that the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, has announced that he's going to pull he's public announcement now. He's going to pull in front of a podium with the seal and all the rest of it. He's going to pull $150 million from the LA Police Department and give it to black communities. And this idiot, on some level, thinks that this will show people how much we care. By penalizing the police, we're going to take $150 million of police money. We're going to take money from the police. We're going to give it to you, and that this will help diffuse the situation. Here's your reward for having destroyed these people's lives and their businesses, because their business is their life. And that's the other thing I said during that episode that got completely, absolutely, like I never said anything about it. I was too busy talking about what a swell guy Lenin is, apparently. When you riot and burn down a city and the response is, here's $150 million, what do you think's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? This is the whole liberal thing. And the Democratic Party's presidential candidate openly said, I am giving money to help bail out looters. Biden says that because he thinks that's going to win him sympathy from the black vote. But it's not. It's going to do just the opposite. What it's going to do, the rioters might find it amusing, but the rioters aren't going to be there on election day, Joe. The people who are going to be voting on election day are going to be the people who live in these neighborhoods, the people who have to deal with these predators every single day. They have to deal with them every single day. They have to walk around in fear and watch their kids get shot in drive-bys because of these predators walking the streets. And you, as the president of the Democratic Party, nominee rather for president, you are saying that not only should these people not have been arrested, but I'm going to spend my own money to let them go free. Okay, Joe, you're going to get destroyed. This is going to be 1968 all over again. It's going to be a landslide for Trump. Landslide. It's clear that the Democrats think that this whole thing is going to be good for them, having race riots and a collapsed economy and stuff. They think that's going to be great, but economy's going to come booming back. They've issued stern orders for curfews regarding COVID-19, and people ignore them. They just utterly ignore them. They utterly flout their authority. Anyway, back to you, Steve. The U.S. Army should not be in the streets of American cities, ever, unless there is a foreign invasion. I completely, absolutely agree with you 100%. The National Guard lives in that kind of gray zone between the full-time professional military. Not to say that guardsmen aren't terrific at what they do, but the difference between the U.S. Army and the National Guard is that the National Guard is essentially a much closer ties to the civilian world than the regular army, and the regular armies should not be doing anything to dull the edge. The job of the army is to go out there and kill people as effectively as they can. And that's not something you want on U.S. soil for whatever reason. It is the as Helios beat me to the punch here, he says stopping mobs from destroying lives and property is actually one of the few things that the government should be doing. 100%. I'm not saying you need to let this go. As I said with Giuliani, I think that this should have been smashed early, really aggressively. By the way, this might be a good time for me to mention that having grown up in Miami, I watched the Liberty City riots, I watched the Overtown riots, came to Los Angeles in time for the Rodney King riots, and seen all the riots since then. It's been about my fifth or sixth, I would say. And in I'll just read that. Terry says, as a retired policeman, I am livid that officers on the lines take a knee. They are there to keep the situation safe, not take a side. Well, that's the first policeman I've heard who feels that way, and I have an obligation to listen to that as well too. I don't know. I just know what I see and what seems to make sense for me. In any event, back to the question. It should never have gotten to the point where there's threats to use the army. What does the president do? If you've got these insanely liberal mayors and governors who will not enforce the law and not protect their own cities or their own people, what can the president do? You say there should be some form of forcing the guard units into action, but how do you do that without creating a problem that's bigger than the one you're trying to solve? I don't know how you do that, but it should never have come to this, and I think that that this is going to be a really big issue and viscerally turn out conservatives who are ready to turn out in droves anyway. The conversation in the comments stream has returned to the whole cops taking anything, and I mean this in the most sincere way possible. Is it possible for any of you, especially policemen, ex-policemen, current policemen, people who have been in law enforcement, could you explain to me why you think the police officers did it? Because if they'd been ordered to do it, and this is so, I wish I would start up with this. If they'd been ordered by the mayor to take a knee, this would be a completely different thing. That would be politically correct coercion, and I would be railing against it. But I'm not asking, I already know you think it's a bad idea. I thought it was a bad idea when I saw it too, and for the same reasons you do. I would like somebody to tell me, in all seriousness, not why you think it's wrong for the police to take a knee. I would like somebody to explain to me why the police chose to take a knee. That's what's interesting to me. I'd like a law enforcement officer or a policeman of any kind to try to explain to me why. Now, Johnny the Frost says the cops in that picture were not street-level cops. Agree, but street-level cops have been doing it. And there's been just numerous cases of them doing it. Now, I haven't seen anybody forced to do it. So, okay, so the arguments are that the police officers have been doing things for political reasons since the dawn of time. So let's say that those Coral Gable cops were all coerced into it. What about the other guys that are doing it around the country? What's making them do it? Because nothing's making them do it. I'm curious. I guess we'll see something here in a minute. No, not all cops genuflected. No, that's absolutely true. Not all cops did. The mob made them do that? I have not seen the slightest sign of that. If I thought that there was any coercion on the part of people forcing the police either take a knee because they're ordered by City Hall or because they were in fear of their lives, which is a perfectly normal reaction. If you're in fear of your life, then we'd be having a different discussion. I haven't seen any evidence of that. Police officers are just people. They're subject to the same cultural Marxism narratives that distorts their worldview as anyone else. It seems to me that the argument that they've got a tough job and they're under stress, you would think that that argument would be an argument in favor of them not taking a knee. You'd think that would be an argument in favor of them feeling like they must preserve this thin blue line appearance at all costs. And I thought that too, and I still think that's mostly the case. But I don't know. This is me just asking. Aesop says it's suspicious that they all took a knee. I might have suspected several or half. Good point, Aesop, except we don't know how many police officers were asked. And we don't know if any of them were asked. We don't know where that came from. We don't know if it came from the police department or from mayor or anything. I don't think it's the mayor. I just don't. But, I mean, I grew up in Coral Gables. But I could be wrong. The response that I think is closest to the truth is the one that was just posted by Zargrave Fang. He said, "Taking the knee renewed their humanity in the eyes of the legitimate protesters." That's it in a nutshell, in my opinion. That's what it is. It that's all of it. That is about as succinctly as said as it could possibly be said. So, yeah, I'm sorry not talking more. I'm just reading a lot. I learn a lot from these shows. I think it must have been hard for the police to do that, especially when somebody's screaming in your face. And I think you can say that the ones who did it are the ones who were more susceptible to cultural Marxism, or they were afraid for their lives, or they were under orders from or social pressure from mayors or other politicians to do it. But I think that it was spontaneous. Now, the point that I closed the reflection show on is a real important one too. I said, so now you have to understand how we feel about things. Watching people loot a store is like watching somebody being killed in slow motion. It's not just stuff, it's their life. They put their entire life into this. And whether it's Macy's or this guy who had a sports bar, has been betting, is working his entire life to get the sports bar, is a black man in Minneapolis, burned to the ground. He's done. He's finished. His life dream is over. The flip side of this argument is that so many people on the other side of the argument think that the looting is a form of justice. That it's what's the big deal? It's a huge deal. When you take somebody's business that they've put 20 years of their life into and all of their effort and probably more of their money, that's killing a guy. It's killing his entire life and all of the time and effort and stuff that he put in there. So I don't know. It's a very I'll just tell you this. This thought that just flew into my head watching all these comments going back and forth, which you don't get to share at home. Watching all of these intense opinions reinforces enormously reinforces the entire premise of this whole little cycle that started back with the power of humility thing. And what it reinforces for me is that I don't know anything about this. I just don't. I don't know anything about it. I'm seeing people emphatic on both sides of the argument, and it's a. There are some things I do know about. I know a bit about astronomy, know a bit about airplanes, know a bit about history. Those things I can speak about with confidence. The other stuff, I'm just calling them like I see them. And I saw a very profound, enormous emotional reaction in people who are governed by emotions. I saw a switch get thrown. And that interests me in the interest of not wanting to live in a society that's at war with itself. That's why that interests me. I'd like to not be at war with itself. So it's not going to make sense. That's probably the wisest thing out there. It's probably the best comment of the night, Roy. It's not going to make sense. I'm just fascinated by this. Um, and just so there's no confusion about it, I just said it, I'll just say it again. When I say I'm fascinated by this, I'm not looking down on this and I'm not judging any of it. I'm not going, oh, that guy's an idiot or, no, it's like people are coming into this comment section and they're making really compelling points and they deeply believe them. And now this kind of thing, I don't have any hesitation with. Terry and Jane said, it was killing me to watch 50 to 70 officers stand as anarchists broke windows and then set fires in the Nashville courthouse last Saturday night. That kind of thing I mentioned when we saw these these looters coming out of here in Los Angeles. It just make me insane. It makes me want to go down there by myself with a rifle and just put an end to this lawlessness. That kind of thing is clearly politically motivated. There's clearly a mayor or somebody who's there for political reasons saying, don't arrest him, don't do anything, we don't want to ramp it up, all of it. That's all crystal clear. And what do you say about that? Everything that they're doing in these blue cities, which I live in the middle of, everything they're doing is making things worse. Somebody just said that Rush Limbaugh said that the rioters are the product of the Democratic Party. Well, of course they are. I mean, of course they are. One of the things we talked about on the right angle, I think with Scott was the or maybe it was on the bill. I don't know. I said that these protest signs were already made. They're already made. The shirts were already made. They just had a line. They had to find a name and waited for a name to fill in the line. So they go out there and do this. But I don't know. This is beyond pathological. Well, I'm listening to you, Famora. I am listening to you. You have the floor. It's a huge, immoral, evil lie, and appeasement will only invite more aggression. Maybe. It seemed to reduce the aggression, which means to me it wasn't appeasement, but See, I see a big difference here between when a mayor says don't arrest anybody. That's appeasement. That's suicidal. It's just plain stupid. It's stupid. But that's not the same thing as what I was talking about with the other police officers. Well, the one thing I've learned is that, one thing I can hope for, anyway, I don't know so much I learned, but the one thing I can hope for is that at the very, 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 very least, and it's not much, but at the very, very least, at least we have a place where we can speak our minds here and not, you know, there you go. Now, this I completely agree with. It's FS Moore. It looks like Femora with my bad eyes. It says, bills are people going around and asking young white women to kneel in the middle of the street, strangers, and they're happy to oblige. Our people is sick. I completely agree. If somebody asked me to kneel, if somebody came up to me, even after they recognized me in the video and said, take a knee in order to I would tell them to go F themselves. You can kiss my ass. I'm not kneeling to you or anybody else. Who do you think you are? You're not going to give me an order to take a knee. No, no, absolutely not. But now we're kind of down to it, really, you know? This is the difference between coercion and something that's not coercion. And that's how we feel about the cops. Okay, but why are they doing it? I'm not arguing. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying why. If they're there and it's humiliating for them to do it, or at least it appears to be to me, they're doing it. Why? I've heard this before. They knew each other from work and it became personal. It can't be personal. He can't become personal. This is the point. It can't be personal. Okay, so I agree with this too. The cops have their sins, but they're majority honorable men. I agree. Those guys who knelt did nothing wrong. I completely agree. They shouldn't be prostrating themselves in expiation of their sins. I agree with that too. But I don't think that's what they're doing. I don't think that's what they're doing. And the reason I don't think it's what they're doing is I don't see anybody forcing them to do it. I mean, if you're going to go into law enforcement, I imagine you'd have the same fundamental attitude that I would have, and most of the people would have. Is somebody comes up to you in the street, says, "Kneel in front of me because of this thing was wrong." I'm not, who do you think you are? You know, seriously, get out of my way. So anyway, we're not going to get any answers. Let me take a couple more questions and we'll see. But it's an interesting night, that's for sure. Here's our friend George Freeland. Have we been ruined by instant news media? If a news site were to impose a strict 48-hour hold on commentary for any current event, could it hold on to an audience? Would it gain the respect of other journalists? Would it be enough to slow the spread of incendiary rumors? Well, George, stepping out of the whole civil unrest thing for a minute, I think the one thing that has been conclusively proven is that the one thing that drives the mass shootings is the publicity. And I think that the news media is as aware of this as anyone else. This idea of glorifying somebody who goes in and shoot up a school or a mall or something. Here's their picture. Here's their name. Here's their interviewing their parents. They were basically suicidal. Now they're suicidal and famous. They've felt ignored their whole life, and now they've got attention. It's the forensic psychologists who study this say that talking about them show in terms of them personally. You got to report the news, but they say things like. Mentioning by name, showing their picture, especially running their count, the body count, and comparing that to other people. If the media is not willing to restrain itself in a situation that is that clear, then they're not willing to restrain themselves in anything. I remember when I don't remember, I don't think it was Eagles. I think it was Don Henley solo album, but maybe it was Eagles. Anyway, I remember when Dirty Laundry came out, which is entirely about this idea about the press. What is it? The bubble-headed bleach blonde comes on at 5. She can tell you about the plane crash with a gleam in your eye. Yeah, it's a filthy business. So here we see. This is the part I'm trying to understand, and this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to understand it. So this guy who's been commenting for more says in a 330 million people country, only about 20 unarmed blacks get killed by police each year, and most of them justifiably. One cannot, in good faith, try to push this as the persecution of blacks. This is beyond absurd. I completely, absolutely, 100% agree. Of course, I agree. Of course, I've been blowing this horn for 5 years now. I've actually been blowing this horn for 10 years now. And I didn't stop blowing the horn. I just said that this is different. And so I don't know what to say. Of course it is. But maybe this is it. You know, I think this is probably it. I think what I realized from this whole adventure when I saw the reaction of the protesters, what I realized more than anything is that the huge majority of people in this country are not motivated by reason. Statistics bounce off of them. Rational arguments bounce off of them. I'm talking about all people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much evidence you put on the table. I've stood up in front of pretty hostile crowds in colleges and said, I know that I care more about black people than Black Lives Matters does. And that's an interesting response. It's a provocative thing to say, and I say it because I want to provoke a response. And that's when I say, well, I clearly care more about than you guys claim to, because I think if you got a problem as 96% of black males being murdered by other black males and 4% being murdered by police under any circumstances whatsoever, if I was serious about the problem and I really believe that Black Lives Matter, I'd be starting with the 96%, not the 4%. That's what I would do if I had a problem. I would start with the reducing the 96% and not the 4%. And this is what I've been saying the whole time. And this is what people are saying now. And what I came to realize was that no matter how much I like it or don't like it, that reality is not getting through. And those are the cards. Those are the cards. Aesop says only blacks getting shot are newsworthy. Absolutely. When's the last time we saw this? Ferguson, a couple years ago. How many cops do you think arrest? How many white cops do you think arrest black men every day in this country? Hundreds, certainly. Is it thousands, maybe? It's been going on for what, 3 years now? Before one of these cases comes up, right? So, what does that tell you about the police? It tells me that the police do their job professionally, virtually all of the time. And it just bounces off. So, if you're going to look at the world and you're going to deal with the world, Famora, I'm just pointing you out just because you've been the most passionate defender of this position. If you're going to deal with the world as well, let me rephrase this. My philosophy, it's my opinion. Everything's my opinion here. If you want to be a rational person, the entire idea of being a rational person is that rational people can communicate to each other beyond the bounds of emotion, and that there are certain laws that are true that I outlined in the video, for one thing. Laws of gravity and thermodynamics, things like that. They can argue about them all they want to, but they're there. And so since they're there, whether you respect them or not, as Ben Shapiro said, facts don't give a damn about your feelings. He's absolutely right. So, if you're going to look at the world rationally, the political problems in the world, we're not dealing with planets or orbits. If you're going to look at the situation in the country, then the first thing a rational person should do, I think, based on the evidence in front of them, is to say that there are phenomena going on that are utterly irrational. And utterly inexplicable based on what's real. Now, you've got an emotional problem, and how do you solve it? My observations are that that the statistical argument, which is reality, isn't having a very big effect at all. So what does have an effect? Well, this did. Why? This is where I'm coming from. This is really where I'm coming from, I think. Probably sum it up with this, call it a night. I've been making the rational case and the statistical case and the narrative case, and all of this stuff, making the case since the Trayvon Martin video. That was, I want to say, 11, somewhere in there. I've been doing it for a long time, and unlike many people here, I've been doing it face to face with screaming, enraged people. And it doesn't seem to be making much of a difference. What I saw make a difference was something that was utterly irrational. In fact, it was counter-rational. It wasn't just not reasonable, it was unreasonable. The police officers taking a knee who had nothing to do with what happened there. There's no justification for police officers taking a knee in any situation, really, if you look at the statistics. And no individual is responsible for what somebody else did. So something happened, and I want to know what. And I'm trying to understand what. Yeah, it's a real show out there, all right. I feel that life has certain realities built into it, and that I also believe that how I feel about things doesn't change those realities. This is what I believe, and what I just mentioned in the firewall. I'm on Team Red. I think there is an external truth that is attainable, and I also think that external truth doesn't penetrate. And that is an exceedingly complex problem. But the first step in solving that problem is to understand that it exists. This reaction was so strong and so immediate and so emotional and so dramatic that it interests me because it accomplished something that reason has not been able to accomplish. And I'm trying to figure out what that is. I got a pretty good idea, but I don't know for sure. I know things about, like I said a few minutes ago, I can tell you some things about airplanes I have a great deal of confidence in. This is human nature, I don't know. Everybody's... Now, John says, I have members of my family who are black and demanding penance for good old Uncle John's white privilege. See? This is why we can't have nice things. Yeah. See, this is it. People are so... I mean, I just witnessed it today. If you say that you think that this was wrong, then everybody on your side thinks that you've gone over to the other side. And if you think that the way that George Floyd was treated was unprofessional, to say the least of it, now it's not just conservatives. Now liberals want you to take a knee and apologize for everything you believe in. No, it's ridiculous. This is why I'm saying this is why we can't have nice things. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I was going to do another question, but I don't think I will. Anyway, I think it bears mentioning that the To America's Firewall was written about a week ago, and that's how I view things right now in this country. I see Team Red and I see Team Blue. I see people in the middle, and to me, did I just realize that I forgot to put the most important line in there? I think I did. I just realized now, looking at this video and thinking about it, that the most important line I wanted to put in there, I forgot to put in there. So I am going to reshoot it. And the most important line really is the reason, the main reason to be on Team Red is because Team Red is happy. Team Blue is miserable. That's it. That's the whole thing. Red team is happy, and blue team is miserable. Red team has something to get up for in the morning. Blue team has something to sleep all day about. And that's really it, right? I mean, every basis of law, right? Every law that's been written, every just law that's been written, hasn't that basically been to advance human happiness? I mean, isn't that the goal? Isn't that the goal of all of this civilization? Human happiness? Isn't that what we're looking for? I probably need to clarify that argument. I will. I'm glad I get to do it again. Blue team is miserable. The pictures that I was able to, I actually bought the picture of Elon Musk to pay $175 for that picture because the photo library that I use didn't have a picture of Elon Musk talking into a microphone. I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here, and then I'm going home. But first I need to find the correct slide to show you something. That's not it. Where is it? Hang on, it's here somewhere. Oh, it'd be downloaded. This is important, so just give me a second. This is actually a kind of a cool thing to close on. It shows you about how the little hamster wheel turns up here. I'll tell you why I spent $175 for that picture when I have plenty of pictures of Elon Musk on my existing plan. Okay, there it is. Hang on, let me find the other one. Yep, perfect. Okay, so I paid $175 for one-time use of this picture. Okay, I'll just leave him up there about halfway. You know why I paid that money for that picture when I had scores of pictures of Elon Musk that I could have gotten for free? I'll tell you why. The reason that I spent money for that picture of Elon Musk was because that picture is the only thing I could find that would justify me using this picture of Cornel West. I saw the picture of Cornel West first. It's one of the first images I saw when I went searching for him, and this is what I saw. Give me a second. I know it's slow and tedious, just play along. So when I was writing the video, I'm looking for photos of Cornel West, and I just do a Google search, and this is the first thing I see. And I said to myself, my God, I have to use that picture, because that picture is Cornel West. That's him. That's who he is, and that's what he's selling. He's a enraged, hateful, awful, awful, awful man. So why did I spend the money to get the picture of Elon Musk? Well, I spent the money to get the picture of Elon Musk because it's the only picture of Elon Musk I could find where they were facing generally towards each other. But the key reason is I got the picture of Elon Musk because Elon Musk is holding a microphone, and so is Cornel West. So the microphone that Elon Musk is holding justifies me using this picture of Cornel West. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. But think of it this way. If I had a picture of Elon Musk smiling at our reception, let's say, and I ran that opposite this picture of Cornel West, then people would be able to rightfully accuse me of cherry picking the pictures and saying, well, but now my defense is, no, both of these guys are speaking publicly into a microphone. Look at their expressions. Cornel West is looking down at people. Elon Musk is looking up at people. You may not realize this, but your brain does, and I do. And so when I decided I wanted to make a comparison between red and blue teams and red and blue America, I wanted to viscerally show the difference. I wanted to viscerally, without words or any effort on my part whatsoever other than the selection, I wanted people to see the difference between these two folks. And the way I wanted people to see the difference between them is I wanted them to look at this and say, if you didn't know anything about it, one guy is hopeful and respectful, the other guy is furious and filled with hate. One guy looks rational, the other guy looks irrational. One guy is handsome, the other one isn't. One guy is groomed but cool, the other one is not. If you had to hang out in a bar with either of these two people, which one would you want to hang out with? And this is not something, this is actually kind of a nice tie-in to close this whole thing up. All of the points I made in that video about the difference between Team Red and Team Blue, those are head points. They stay here, and you recognize them, and you mean a lot. They mean a lot, and it's statistical evidence, like the actual facts of the Black Lives Matter issue. It's just this. All the things I listed between blue and red is data. It's head food, and that's it. But this is different. This is visceral. This is emotion. This is something that gets done without me having to lift a finger. If I put these two pictures up, split screen, without saying a word, and all I did was have a title come up on the screen and said, which one do you want to be? Argument's over. So, this is what happens when you get a daywalker. I mean, look at that. No, I will not have to cut this portion of the lounge. One-time use, I paid for the thing, and I've already included the work which it was included in, and they can do whatever they want to. I could have found, now by the way, needless to say, I could have gotten a picture of Elon Musk without paying for it, but on this one, I figured I should probably cover my bases legally, because I don't want somebody pulling this down because of that. It'd be nice to be able to say, here's my receipt, dude. Anyway, that's it. Well, this has been an interesting show, certainly. I think I'll take this one out first. Yes, I think that was the right decision. He's not a nice man. He's not. And this guy is. He said recently, I think Elon said I think Natasha told me this last night. He said, when I was young, I used to want to work with talented people. Now that I'm older, I want to work with talented people who are good people, something like that. And that sounds right to me. Anyway, that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. I will reshoot that thing first thing in the morning. And okay. Helios has a guide to a brief guide on becoming a better shooter on the member blog. I will definitely do that. That's always something that's interesting to me and my wife, who's a better shot than I am and who's in the back room here. I cannot remember. Time is passing in a very strange way with the lockdown. It was either yesterday or the day before. We were sitting out on our back porch enjoying the sunset and cleaning our weapons and loading the magazines. And she decided it would be a good idea to put up like a little screen because it's occasionally possible to see in our backyard from across the street, and we didn't want to trigger anybody with the triggers. But you know, it's she commented on it, and I felt it myself. It's just reassuring. It's just builds your confidence. I said. You know, if somebody smashes a window and tries to get in here, they're going to be confronted with a big flash and a loud noise. And how many times do you think that will have to happen before anybody else gets the idea that maybe it's better to go to a different house? This is how it works. This is why the Korean stores were the only things that didn't burn in 1992 when the whole city was on fire. They watched the coverage of these riots, and you could see helicopters doing a big zoom. Here's a building on fire. Here, in 92, the whole city was burning. You could stand up on Mulholland and just the whole thing's on fire. So yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw this tweet that Antifa put out, but it said, tonight we're going to the white neighborhoods and we're going to take back what's ours from these MFs. I said, yeah, sure you are. No, you're not. And the reason you're not is because you know if you do, you're going to get shot. And if you get shot, breaking into a house in, let's say, Bel Air. You've smashed a window in Bel Air, you're climbing in a window in Bel Air, I suspect that you're going to get shot, and the person who shot you is going to get a accommodation for it. Last thing I'll say, just to keep people a little more cheery ending than what the show has been in, please don't forget what I mentioned on one of these shows. It's all a blur now. Don't forget to continue to look at what's not in the frame. Don't ever let that astonishing power of this, don't let that blind you. You have no idea what's over there. You have no idea what's over there. Nothing. You have no idea. And one of the things that people who make media do is they decide what goes in the frame. We just had a great example of those two pictures of Cornel West and Elon Musk. And the news media determines what goes in the frame, and a lot of people determine what goes in the frame. You look at all this stuff and so on, but now, again, think that there are 99.9999% of the American people not burning things, not rioting, not smashing windows, not chanting things, not confronting police officers, not taking knees. They're just not. And when all you do is see what's inside the frame, and if all you watch is nothing but the frame, then you will develop a warped perspective on reality. And some kind of honest perspective on reality, as close as we can get to it, is basically the mission here. And that mission's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who continue to keep the lights burning. We have one or two fewer today, but that's the way it goes. And I suspect we'll have a few more fewer by tomorrow. But, you know, you call them like you see them, and if you start playing to the audience, you're pretty much done. Just ask George Lucas or Anybody else who's ever ruined anything by trying to play to the audience. Anyway, let me just say for the sake of it, just to get it on the record here, for all the people that have been in the comment section, thank you for your honesty and your passion about these things. I have respect for everybody and every comment in there. I didn't see anything in there that I couldn't identify with at some point or another. And I don't want anybody to come out of here thinking that that I didn't listen to what they were saying, and it's a tough thing. All we can do is try and figure it out together, I guess. Okay, guys, that'll do it. Thanks. We will see you hopefully next week right here on the very own Stratosphere Lounge. Oops, that's not the right one. You know that, don't you?
On May 29th, 2020, Dr. Cornel West, a leading voice of modern progressivism, was interviewed on CNN regarding the rampant violence in the streets of American cities following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
Pathetic. It's pathetic is what it is. Pathetic. Honestly. You would think after doing this for 255 episodes that by now, I guess I will say this. I know I'm still, and this is not one of those kind of mock things where I just don't want to go back to the picture because I can't. There is a certain kind of a advantage to be made, and I'd love to tell you that this was accidental, but it wasn't. It was genuinely, completely, and absolutely intentional. I'm not joking about this either. If your reputation is for being the worst produced show on the internet, that makes life an awful lot easier. If you're crushed for time on things. Anyway, thanks for joining us. That version of the firewall will not be seen by anybody else. I think we'll reshoot it first thing in the morning and then slap it together and get it out the door. All right, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.